Has the dust settled now? Have we all taken our deep breaths, done our centering, let our anger and emotion out of our systems? Can we go back to just loving the hell out of this big, beautiful sport? I know I'm ready to. I know Notre Dame might not be ready to. BYU might not be. Vandy might not be. I'm ready to. I think the majority of us are ready to. So let's get started. Welcome in to the SpringBlake College Football Show. This is your favorite ball knower's favorite ball knowing show. Today is Wednesday, December 10th, our first midweek show with no games to preview. I apologize. If you came here for expert analysis on Army-Navy, they're going to get a shout out somewhere on this show, but we are not going to be breaking down that game. What we will be doing, we'll be fixing the college football playoffs. I've got just what we need to make the most fair and balanced and exciting postseason structure. I cannot wait to share this all. I shared it in the preseason. I've made a few minor adjustments. The show is a little bit bigger now than it was then, so I'm ready to give it back out to you again. We'll probably have to do it 5 or 6 more times before we actually get people to listen to it, so we'll do that today. We'll do a little bit of a year in review. I want to go back on some of our preseason predictions, win totals I handed out, extra stuff like that, playoffs, predictions, all that. We'll go through and see how we did. Sidebar, if you just want a little look into the future, I wouldn't be doing it if we did poorly. So we're going to take a look back and toot our own horn a little bit. And we'll finish off the show by filling out my official college football playoff bracket. As is the case with every show, we will have a lot of fun while we do it. Before we get into everything today, I have to ask you, please support this show. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast, leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. If you are watching on YouTube, you guys know I love you the most. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment. Let me know your thoughts on the college. Have your emotions settled down from the college football playoffs? Do you need to let out some steam? Let it out in the comment section. Anything you guys try to, give in support, I try to give in tenfold worth of content. So thank you for supporting us there. Make sure to also go to the socials at SpringBlake CFB, Twitter, TikTok. Throw me a bone there as well. So yes, I want to open things up today talking about my fix for the college football playoffs. And before we get into the solution, I want to talk about the current structure and the guidelines I think we need to start prioritizing. The first being that in a general sense, as it pertains to the college football playoffs, this 12-team format that we are currently in, I'm a huge fan of the way things are for the most part. I think the expansion from 4 to 12 has really helped make it feel like more teams have a shot to win it all. And of course, we're only in the second year. Last year, it was clear early on that Ohio State was going to steamroll with the way they looked in the playoffs, but it didn't enter that way. Ohio State lost in the regular season finale to Michigan. It was like, oh, this thing's pretty open. How's it going to play out? This year, everybody was like, yeah, it's going to be Ohio State again. And then they go and lose the Big Ten title game. I know that there are a few teams I feel better about this year than the others, but there's still a path for a few different teams to make nice runs. So I love that we have given us, a bigger sense of who can win on a year in, year out basis. Last, structure with 4, you really only had at most 4 teams that could win it. And a lot of the time, 2 of them. I remember when TCU Michigan happened, it was like, okay, do we really think TCU is going to win? And then of course TCU won, and then they got to the championship. It was like, okay, well, Georgia's now going to steamroll them. I like that we have more teams that can win it now. I also think in this structure, in this expanded era, you are allowing teams second chances, the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, develop as a season goes on, which is what being part of a team is all about. In the previous structure, in the 4-team, you had to be perfect, nearly perfect, to even hope for a chance into the dance. Now you're given a little bit of a buffer, not a major one, but a slight buffer in case you hit your bump along the way. In the last playoff structure, this year Ohio State would have still been in, even with the loss to Indiana, but last year, if they had lost to Michigan, that would have cost them a spot in the college football playoffs. You are national champions. So I just like that you are allowed a little bit of a buffer. Again, as we've seen, Notre Dame, if you get to 2 losses, or to Texas and to Vandy, 2 is still probably not enough, but you're allowed a little bit of an adjustment here and there to make your case to get in. As I'm saying that, I remember Texas had 3 losses. Texas did have 3. I also like that you get games that you typically wouldn't see before. You get a heightened importance for bowl games that I don't think they had in bowl season, but it feels a little bit more elevated now, and just overall more competition. I think it's been great for the sport. But all of that said, I think there are a few guidelines that need to be prioritized more than they are right now to ensure for a better, more competitive, and enjoyable playoff experience. The most important thing that we need to do moving forward is to ensure that the majority of participants are decided from results on an actual football field. Right now, the way things stand, we're allowing a committee of individuals, a group that 2 years in, I don't think have many fans in the world, to hand select the majority of teams into the college football playoffs, when in fact they should have as minimal influence as possible and should only be used when specifically needed. Now, for me, that comes by way of play-in games for a lot of these at-large bids, something which I'll discuss more in detail when we go into how I'd fix the playoffs as a whole. But that is one thing where I say, okay, well, we need to limit the influence of the playoff committee. We also need to maintain the importance of playing and winning your conference championship. I want winning your conference title to still mean something. So in doing that, I think we need to guarantee that all 4 power conferences will not be left out of the CFP if they make their conference title game, or be kicked out of the playoffs if they lose it. If you're in, you're in. Now, of course, you can't do that with the current structure, but again, I'm about to give you my solution. And of course, you hear that, and you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. We just watched Virginia take on a 5-loss Duke team in the ACC title game. You're telling me you want to make it so both of those teams are guaranteed into the college football playoffs as they would be this season? No. I have another guideline that needs to be adjusted and followed. Tiebreakers. Tiebreakers in conference standings need to be severely adjusted. Conference realignment and expansion have made tiebreakers far too messy. So moving forward, the tiebreakers should be as followed. Number 1, head-to-head. And number 2, college football playoff committee rankings. We should never be living in a world where a 5-loss ACC team is playing for a conference championship. So in this instance, when there is no head-to-head and you go to the playoff rankings second, you would be able to swap in Miami into the ACC title game over Duke, which would create a much more enjoyable experience. Say Miami beats Virginia, then Miami gets that spot. Then you've got no Notre Dame conversation. Like, we need to find out a way in the era of big conferences, in the era of 18 ACC teams, where half of them aren't going to play each other, you need to be able to have criteria in place that are better tiebreakers than where things stand right now. Remember when we were sitting here a month ago when we were like, here's the doomsday scenario for the ACC, and it was like, this had to happen, and that, and 5 other things, and then those things happened. That was a mess. We need to get away from that. And I think the committee can start serving its purpose outside of choosing the majority of teams and start instead giving us tiebreaker scenarios for those teams that probably need to be elevated into conference title games. So as I said, that ensures that we do a better job of getting the right teams in the playoffs while still making sure the committee holds some structure for the sport. Those are 3 simple changes that I think solve most issues we have with the current structure and process. Allowing more tickets to be punched to the college football playoffs on an actual football field and not by a committee of individuals is massive. Ensuring that playing for a conference title still holds a high level of importance in this sport is massive. And using the playoff committee's rankings to serve as a tiebreaker scenario in conference standings when there is no head-to-head matchup, because conference expansion, conference realignment has ruined that, between the 2 teams is important. So those are the 3 things that I take a look at. There is one other thing with the current structure I'm sold on, could be swayed. I don't think it's the biggest difference maker in the world. I do think we should be reseeding things after the opening round, just to make there a little bit more of a reward for securing that first round bye. If there ever is an upset, if a James Madison somehow pulls off a win over Oregon, or let's use a better example and not use the G5s. I guess who would it be then? Say that Alabama beats Oklahoma. And then maybe Alabama, if we view them, well, no, because who would you want to use at that point? I don't think it works too well with this year, so maybe I need to take that back a bit. But I do think it makes sense to try and find an extra way to reward teams for getting the first round bye. Obviously, the week off is great enough, but being able to kind of be the 1 seed and to get your lowest seed in the first round, I think makes a lot of sense. So again, not the biggest thing I'd put on the agenda this offseason. I'd put those 3 things first, but a nice ancillary fix that we could use to look at going down the road. Whew, that's a mouthful. Jesus. All right. That's enough stalling here. We've spent enough time building this up from Monday to now. Let's release my baby, my Mona Lisa, my fix for the college football playoffs. It starts with the expansion to 16 teams, but that is only to allow us to move away from the 5-7 structure that we currently live in. And that's 5 automatic qualifiers for conference champions, 7 at-large bids. I want to move away from that and move us into a more structured and clearly defined 4-4-5-2-1. That's a lot more numbers. A lot more meaning. That 5-7 sounds way simpler than that, but let's break it down. What that means. Let's go over what 4-4-5-2-1 means. That means that you are guaranteeing 4 teams from the We're going to go back. That means that you are guaranteeing 4 teams from the SEC into the playoffs, 4 teams from the Big Ten, and then a combined 5 teams from the ACC and the Big 12. And then you would also have 2 at-large bids after that, and then 1 slot for either your highest-rated G5 or independent. Now, the beauty in this structure, in the 4-4-5-2-1, is that you move entirely away from a committee deciding who should get in. And instead, you will use play-in games to determine the overwhelming majority of participants. Conference championship weekend will still exist, and part of this expansion and new guidelines will ensure that teams will not be kicked out for playing an extra game, making the conference title, only that they can improve their seeding if they win. So each participant of conference title weekend will be in the dance, and that's SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12. But we will avoid a Duke scenario from happening by using the committee rankings as a second tiebreaker in conference standings. You would instead have Virginia playing Miami in the ACC title instead of Virginia and Duke because we used the playoff seeding to break the tie. And then the play-in games will go as follows. You'll have the 3 seeds from both the SEC and the Big 10 hosting the 6 seeds at home play-in games. And you'll also have the 4 seeds from the SEC and Big 10 hosting the 5 seeds from those conferences. If you want to complain that it's not fair to get more teams in from those 2 conferences than it is the ACC and the Big 12, I'm not here to have that conversation. If you watch the sport and you don't think that the SEC and the Big 10 are really the power 2 in this sport and that the ACC and Big 12 are a peg down, you're not a ball knower. So avoid the rest of this conversation. You're guaranteeing those 2 power 2 conferences the most teams in the dance. But either way, if you're on board with that, then you are determining 8 teams. That's how you determine 8 teams to get in from the SEC and the Big 10. Now remember that I said that the ACC and the Big 12 get a combined 5 teams in, but all conference championship participants are guaranteed a spot. So you've got the 2 that are playing for the ACC title, the 2 from the Big 12 title game. They're guaranteed into the college football playoffs. You have 1 spot remaining. So what will you do? You'll have a play-in game. The 3rd-ranked teams from the ACC and the Big 12 will meet on a neutral field, birthing a fun new rivalry between these 2 conferences, with the winner locking up a spot in the college football playoffs. As I mentioned, you will also get 1 spot taken up by the top G5 or independents. So whoever the top 2 are in the committee rankings will also meet on a neutral field for a play-in game. So, this year, for instance, it would be Notre Dame and Tulane. Top independent, top G5. If Notre Dame wasn't around or they were part of a conference, it would be Tulane and JMU would be playing for 1 spot. So at worst, you're getting 1 G5 in. A lot of the times, though, you probably wouldn't because it'd most likely be Notre Dame if they don't fall off a cliff. And there you go. Simple as that, right? We've just filled up 14 of the 16 slots by games played on an actual football field. And think about how fun that would be for a second. Now, I love Army-Navy weekend. I think it should still be a standalone game, but that game finishes, then you're like, man, it's a Saturday without college football. But imagine if Army-Navy was the appetizer to 6 play-in games that kicked off the college football playoffs. That'd be like saying this Saturday, a few days from now, we would get to watch Army-Navy to start things off, but then Oklahoma at Ole Miss, playing for a spot in the college football playoffs, Texas at Texas A&M, the 4 and 5 seeds from the SEC, playing for a spot in the playoffs, Iowa at Oregon, and Michigan at USC, winners from both of those games making it to the college football playoffs. Now, yes, I know all of those are rematches from this regular season. It just happened to work out that way. I don't know what to tell you. I'd still enjoy it. I'd still have a lot of fun watching those rematches. But then you would also get those extra games. Like I mentioned, the ACC Big 12 rivalry now. That fifth final spot for those 2 conferences, you would get Utah versus Pitt. And then the same thing, like I mentioned earlier, you'd get Notre Dame, Tulane. So you'd get all of those games in addition to Army-Navy. If you don't want to do home games, maybe you could start bowl season and make those bowl games, have a little bit more relevance to them. And that would be the kickoff for the college football playoffs. So there's 14 seeds all figured out. And all that would leave is 2 remaining spots belonging to the 2 highest teams remaining in the college football playoff committee rankings. And yes, when you open it up to 16, as we've seen with 12, there will be a ton of teams to try and choose from at that point. But remember this. Right now, the committee is selecting 58% of the bracket. In this 16-team format, where there's just 2 spots they have to decide, that is down to 12.5%. I am much more comfortable knowing that the overwhelming majority of teams will be earning a spot on a football field. Obviously, nothing's perfect when it comes to trying to figure out the solution to the college football playoffs. There never will be, because there's going to be a handful of teams that feel like they were slighted. They feel like they deserve to be in, but they were left out. But this model does so much to ensure the integrity of the game is kept in place. You're creating the most possible amount of meaningful games in college football. You are allowing 14 of 16 spots to be decided on a football field, while adding in what would be an electric round of play-in games to pump more money, excitement, arousal into the sport. You guarantee that the Power 4 conferences will not be punished for playing in their conference title games, that each of those participants will be in the college football playoffs. They can improve their seeding from winning it. And you're also still using the playoff committee to help decide the final 2 at-large bids and handle any conference tiebreakers for those title games. So, I think it does the best job of making the most amount of people happy. Notre Dame in this scenario, like they still will always have to have a play-in game. It's a punishment for not being in a conference. If you want to have a guaranteed spot, go and join the Big Ten and be one of those top 4 seeds. I would also like to say, if you're Notre Dame in this scenario, you get a pretty lucky draw because you're mostly just going to have to face the top-rated G5. Go ahead and beat them. Go and beat a G5 team, and then you can make the playoffs. It's not that bad for Notre Dame either. So if anyone important or anyone who knows someone important just wants to send this video along, make sure to credit SpringBlake, your favorite ball knower's favorite ball knower, solving the college football playoffs. Whew, I got tired saying all that. That was tiring. All right, so because there are no games this weekend, because my brilliant, beautiful playoff play-in round weekend is not in effect yet, there's not really much to preview this week. As I mentioned, we're not going to give you a deep analysis on Army-Navy. Outside, I'll always be Team Army. Shout out to my cousin Luke, who is currently on the West Point lacrosse team, that being Army. My cousin Sam, his brother, who went there for a little bit as well. So we're not going to do any of that. We do have some time to kill on this show. So I wanted to wrap a bow on some preseason predictions that we handed out in the regular season, or in the preseason, that are now in the books. As I mentioned at the beginning, would I be doing this if we bombed? Probably not, but we didn't. So let's hype myself up a little bit. Okay, so preseason team total bets and predictions. I gave you guys 3 team totals in each of the Power 4 conferences. It was over wins, under wins, all that sort of stuff. And we hit a nice and clean 67%, going 2-1 in each conference. I didn't hit any of them perfect. I didn't go below 500. It was very weird how it all worked out. Each Power 4 conference, I went 2-1. In the SEC, I handed out Texas A&M over 7.5 wins. Easy cash. As did Missouri over 6.5, that being it cashed. Our one loss, Kentucky, under 4.5, they got to 5 somehow, despite being one of the worst teams I had to watch all season. In the Big Ten, 2 winners were USC over 7.5. They got to 9 wins. Huge year for Lincoln Riley. We took Illinois under 8.5. That one was just, so close. They finished with 8 regular season wins. That still counts as a winner. Our one loser was believing in Nebraska. We took them to go over 7.5 wins. They finished the season at 7-5. So that's how we did in those 2. In the Big 12, we cashed on Utah over 7.5 wins pretty easily while doing it. And we also, this is the one I'm most proud of, we bet on our guy, Connor Wegman, to take Houston to at least 6 wins. He did much more than that. Got him to 9. Huge season for the Cougars. One loser in the Big 12 was Kansas. We took them over 6.5 wins. They finished 5-7. And last but not least, predicting anything in the ACC this year was an absolute dumpster fire, but we still went 2-1, cashing on Georgia Tech over 7.5 wins, and also the grittiest play we took all season, Stanford. Over 3.5 wins. Shout out to my guys, Andrew Luck and Frank Reich, for getting us to a 4-win season for the Cardinal. And as of course, the one loser in this conference, Florida State, just fell apart again. 2nd year in a row. Win total for them was 7.5. I don't even have what they finished with. 5 wins? 4? I know they're not bowl eligible. Terrible season at FSU. So we won across the board on team totals. That was par for the course in preseason predictions, hitting on 7 of 12 teams. In the preseason, I gave you Georgia. I gave you Alabama. I gave you Oregon. I gave you OSU. I gave you Texas A&M. I gave you Oklahoma. And I also gave you James Madison, all to make the playoffs. I know that the college sport world knows a guy out there named Brandon Walker. If you're a college football fan, how do you not know him? I think he got a couple of them in there. I did the draft with Tom Fornelli. He got 1 out of 12. Yikes. Couldn't be us. Couldn't be us ball knowers here. 7 out of 12. And really, that means I had 5 misses. I really only regret one of the ones I didn't pick. At the last second, I swapped out Texas Tech. I said they were going to be the Big 12 representative, and then I switched the day that we put out the show. I swapped in Baylor. Obviously, Baylor had a really down season. Texas Tech is a wagon, so I do severely regret that one. Other than that, I had Notre Dame in. I'll blame that one on the committee. No, Notre Dame was in. How could you take them out at the last second, even though I thought it was the right decision? So Notre Dame was one of them. Everyone had Penn State and Clemson in. They were 2 of the biggest disappointments in the sport this season, so that's more on them than it is me. And I had more faith in Texas than I probably should have. But even then, they're one of the few final teams that was just left out of it. So again, okay, I should have swapped Ole Miss for Texas. That was the one difference there. But I still think Texas is one of the more talented teams I watch play football all season. So, as I said, really the only regret is Texas Tech. 67% on win totals, 58% on the playoffs. Not a bad debut season at the SpringBlake Studios, if you ask me. All right, we're going to take our one break of the show. We're going to finish off with college football playoff predictions.
Balake. Where is Balake at?
All right, now that I allowed myself to gas myself up for at least 5-7 minutes on the show, it's time to put out another prediction. The prediction to end all predictions. It is the SpringBlake College Football Playoff Bracket. So let's do the easy ones first. I see Ole Miss getting by Tulane again. As a JMU alum, it pains me to say it, I do see Oregon getting past the Dukies in that one. Alabama, Oklahoma. Now, here's the thing. We're going to do full game breakdowns next week leading up to the games. Today, we're just going to go by just some quick hitters, quick thoughts on what I think might happen in these matchups. Alabama-Oklahoma, rematch from a few weeks ago. Two teams right now that are playing really good defensively. I'd give Oklahoma the slight edge over Alabama's defense, but the Crimson Tide are playing great on that side of the football. And two offenses that are allergic to putting up points. Alabama has been out of sorts for a while now. Oklahoma is very reliant on its two passing plays down the field for 75-yard scores to get points on the board. It's a tough one. So you're in Oklahoma now. Man, I didn't do any notes on this because I wanted to just give like my fresh thoughts on it, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to take Alabama. I'm going to go Oklahoma. And that pains me because in the preseason, I made the Alabama Crimson Tide my college football playoff champion. I predicted them to win it all. Right now, Oklahoma has the edge defensively. They're about on par right now with the offense with Alabama, and they do have an advantage on special teams. Their kicker, whose name is escaping me right now, is one of the best in the sport. He's got the short shorts. I'm going to spend 5 more seconds thinking of his name. He's the only kicker I've mentioned on this show. Not going to get it. Anywho, Alabama, the best shot for them is that this week off right now, they can get healthy. Jam Miller needs to come back. LT Overton on edge needs to come back. Josh Cuevas, the tight end, needs to come back. And outside of those guys coming back, you need Ty Simpson to I don't know if he needed to be in bubble wrap the last 10 days, but like you need him to be as clean and fresh as possible because since he's been getting banged up, since the Alabama offensive line has done a poor job of keeping him upright, the deep passing game has lost a touch. Obviously, Ryan Williams has been an ineffective playmaker for this offense. I want to take Alabama, but that tells me that Oklahoma is going to get the win and move on into the second round. And then Miami-Texas A&M is such a funny game because two of the most physical trench play teams we have in college football. Miami's lines are big and ferocious. Texas A&M's just as much. Two of the best pass rushers in the game, Reuben Bain for the Hurricane, Cassius Howell for the Aggies. What's funny to me about this game is these are the two quarterbacks for these teams that I trust, let me look through the bracket, the least. And that's to take out JMU and Tulane. Of the big dogs in the college football playoffs, the quarterbacks that scare me the most are Carson Beck and Marcel Reed. They can have games where they look dominant, and you're like, oh, wow, this is some of the better quarterback play in the country. They also go out and have their 2-3 turnover games where you're like, hey, they cost us that one. At Kyle Field, early afternoon game, I'm going to go with Miami. I think they're being disrespected right now. I do think that Texas A&M has been a beneficiary of a bad schedule, and we've seen them go up against physical teams a la Texas and look pretty off. I do think that the Miami front seven will be able to give Marcel Reed some fits. I don't think the receivers are going to be as dynamic as they were in the first month of the regular season. So I'm predicting Miami to go into College Station and pull off the upset victory. So that gives us then a quarterfinals of Oregon versus Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Indiana, Ole Miss, Georgia, nice rematch there, and then Ohio State versus Miami. So let's start at the top, Oregon, Texas Tech. I've said it for a month now. I think that Oregon is very, very dangerous. And honestly, I think on last episode, on Monday's show, I said the two teams that I would want to put like my long shots in on are Oregon and Texas Tech. Here they are facing in the quarterfinals. As good as I think Texas Tech's defense is, and it is phenomenal, I think the physicality on the Oregon offensive line will try to neutralize a little bit of what they do on that side of the ball. And I do think this is I'm projecting Oregon to have DeCorian Moore back, to potentially have Evan Stewart back. And those two with Malik Benson and Kenyon Sadiq at tight end, I think they're going to race every single team they face to 50. So I am going to take Oregon. I do think that Texas Tech will have responses on offense, but they've had a few clunky games out of Baron Morton, maybe not as talented playmakers out wide. So I'll take the Ducks to move on into the semifinals. Oklahoma, Indiana. Haven't thought about this one yet because, as I mentioned, I thought I was going to go Alabama, Indiana, but here we are, the Sooners against the Hoosiers. What stands out to me the most about this game? I was very impressed by Indiana's trench play. Now, it is just coming out that I think they lost one of their defensive linemen for the rest of the playoffs, one of their starters. He was jumping, celebrating the Big Ten title, and all of a sudden something messed up with his leg happened. I don't have my phone on me, so I can't check the injury. But regardless, they're going to lose one of their more talented defensive linemen. That being said, still great in the trench play, good quarterback, good playmakers. Wow, this is a tough one. See, this is the problem with not doing notes, is that you never really know where you're going to go. Oklahoma, Indiana. I think that Oklahoma's offense will come to bite them in this one. I do think that I like the corners that Indiana has. D'Angelo Pons, I thought they did a good job against Ohio State's playmakers overall. I think the absolute lack of a ground game for that offense will hurt them. John Mateer, ever since the hand surgery, has not been an effective, efficient passer. So I do think it'll be a close game. I do think that Oklahoma's defense presents a significant challenge for the Hoosier offense, but I will take Indiana, put up more points, and move on to the semifinals to play against the Ducks. And then on the bottom side of the bracket, Ole Miss, Georgia rematch. The last time these two teams faced, Georgia just had an answer every single time for this Ole Miss defense. And now it's Ole Miss defensive coordinator Pete Golding who will be the head coach for this group. Obviously, we won't know how this team is going to look offensively without Lane Kiffin, although they will have a lot of their assistants back for this playoff run. I think the Bulldogs are one of the best teams in college football. I think they're up there with Indiana and Ohio State right now. I do think that their offense can have some off days, especially through the air. Gunnar Stockton, most recently in that game against Georgia Tech, it was very clunky, but they'll always be able to run the football well. They'll stop the run. And I do see Georgia moving past again for a second time and taking, Kirby Smart taking his Bulldogs into the semifinals for second year in a row, or did they get bounced? I think they got bounced before that. Anywho. And that leaves us with Miami, Ohio State. This just screams a Carson Beck 3-interception game. Ohio State was right there with Indiana. I really don't feel that much worse about them after they lost the game. There's to Indiana. There's like a few things where I'm like, ooh, this kind of concerns me a little bit. I still think that they are above just about every team in this sport right now. So give me Ohio State to win and move on over the Miami Hurricane, setting us up with the semifinals. Shout out to Big Ten. Man, if they get 3 of the final 4, there's going to be some chatter. Chatter. Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. 2 awesome matchups. We get a rematch from early in this season when Indiana went into Oregon and handed the Ducks their first loss of the season. Dan Lanning has this team playing its best football right now. And that's not to say that Indiana isn't. They just won a Big Ten title. They finished off an undefeated regular season. They're one of the best stories in the sport. I think the pop you are going to get from Oregon's offense, and I need to stop saying that word. I say every team's going to pop. Oregon, I think, is going to be something different in the postseason. That's my big projection here. And I think that they were close enough with Indiana the first time around that with that wide receiver trio, if they're all there, with Dante Moore having another few games under his belt, having seen the Indiana defense one time already, I'm going to take the Ducks to move on to play for a national title. And that leaves us with Ohio State, Georgia on the other side of the bracket. Man, what a great matchup that'll be. The talent edge is obviously with the Buckeyes. And I think where things play out, like Kirby Smart is going to need to take it to Ohio State. Kind of like how they took it to Texas late in that game, where they're like, you know what, we're going to play with our hair on fire. We got to this point. We might not have the talent edge, but we're just going to get things rolling and try and just surge at the right time. They're not going to be as lethal throwing the ball down the field, which I do think plays into Ohio State's benefit. Everything for Georgia's passing attack seems to be a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. Zachariah Branch creating after the catch, the tight end play. I think that's going to play into Ohio State's favor. So give me a national title matchup. Oregon, Ohio State. Oregon's my team. I think the way that their season ended last year and how they got smacked by the Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl and were kind of just blindsided, like, whoa. How did that happen? The way that they're going to be playing at the start of this postseason run, the way they finished out the regular season, getting guys back healthy on offense, they're the team that, to me, resembles Ohio State most from last year, where it was like, hey, we We just got hot at the right time. I think that's what's going to happen here. It would be an awesome game watching the Oregon offense go up against the Buckeye defense. Not to say that it wouldn't be fun on the other side of things too, but that would be what stands out to me the most. And I'm going to take Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks to win the 2025-26 college football playoffs. How'd I do on time? Hell yeah, shorter show. Well, as I mentioned, guys, there's not a whole lot else to discuss. I was even trying to think next week, like 2 shows. It's like, okay, well, you could space out your game previews. Maybe the sport gives us something to talk about. Maybe we do, some other stuff. I've always wanted to do kind of sprinkle in some season in reviews, talk about some teams whose seasons have come to an end and give some stuff projections or what happened, all that. It's all a bunch of mumbo jumbo to you guys right now. Hopefully by next week I've got it figured out, but we are going to finish things off here today, keeping the show under about 40 minutes. So that's good for the ears and the eyeballs if you're on YouTube. Again, thank you for supporting the show. Please continue to do so. Please continue to subscribe to the channels, leave 5-star reviews, like the videos, interact, follow the socials. I love you. I appreciate you. Enjoy Army, Navy. Try and enjoy the one lone game we're given. Maybe this is a weekend you spend with the lady. I know I'm going to go and try and take mine to do some wintry type stuff, so when playoff time comes around, I can sit at home that Saturday. But make sure to enjoy your weekend, and we'll be back next week. I love you. I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.